If you're interested in exploring these topics further, learning and connecting with like-minded individuals, check out the 3 Patreon discussion groups available. Just visit theinfinitesparkofbeing.com and click the participate button. I also offer a free meditation group online every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. Just go to any of my social media profiles for the link found in my link tree. There's no pressure to be on camera or to actively participate in any of these groups. Just come and listen and enjoy. Join an online spiritual community of everyday people committed to understanding the human experience more deeply through spiritual practices that we can apply to our everyday lives. Join us. Welcome to the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. My name is Keith Welsh, and in this episode, we're going to talk about a synchronicity that I've experienced quite often and the great spiritual implications of that particular synchronicity and how it has affected my life. So I guess you could say that this episode is about synchronicities, but more so how I relate to one in my life. I mean, a lot of people experience them, but might not indulge them. So first, let's start with the definition of a synchronicity. A synchronicity is a simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related but have no discernible causal connection. Now, what Wikipedia says about it. A synchronicity is a concept introduced by analytical psychiatrist Carl Jung to describe events that coincide in time and appear meaningfully related, yet lack a discoverable causal connection. Jung held that this was a healthy function of the mind that can be harmful within psychosis, which is true. There's a fine line between synchronicity and making psychologically harmful connections between unrelated things. In fact, there's a great book titled Synchronicity, The Art of Coincidence, Choice, and Unlocking Your Mind by Dr. Kirby Surprise, which is apparently his real name. And at no point does he address this in his book. He just sits there like we're not all thinking about how strange his name is. And the fact that his last name is Surprise, and he studies synchronicities, which is in and of itself some kind of synchronicity. Anyhow, it's a fun book where he tries to stay scientific about something that becomes so mystical, and at many points in the book addresses this problem. So it's a good one. And finally, let's read a quote from Carl Jung's book, Synchronicity, an Acausal Connecting Principle. We put 30 spokes together and call it a wheel, but it is on the space where there is nothing that the utility of the wheel depends. We can turn clay to make a vessel, but it is on the space where there is nothing that the utility of the vessel depends. We pierce doors and windows to make a house, and it is on these spaces where there is nothing that the utility of the house depends. Therefore, just as we take advantage of what is, we should recognize the utility of what is not. This is quite a Taoist statement made here. I really like it, the idea that absence is the quality that makes certain things useful. It's something we don't think about often. It's one of those mind-loosening contemplative thought exercises that are so necessary in life. So often with things like this, we try to find some objective across-the-board truth, especially if we agree with the statement or if the statement really resonates with us. And as we've discussed in the past, objectivity isn't exactly accessible, at least not in the way the mind would like it to be. And this is the trouble that we find when we attempt to engage with mysticism, and synchronicity is an attempt to engage with the mystical. So I guess up front, I would encourage you not to try to find any sort of scientific validation for your synchronicities. Leave that up to the evangelicals, right? Just experience them. Stop trying to make them objectively true. The most moving experiences in life have no objective reality. They have no across-the-board truth. An example would be love. The love you experience for one person isn't experienced by everyone. It's an experience unique to us and often motivates us to change for the better. Besides, we don't need more wet blankets like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins. We have too many as it is. Meaning is subjective. So if it means something to you, if it touches your heart, then go with it. Don't look to these fucking nerds to qualify it with science, which is supposed to be constantly changing anyway. At least that's how science used to work. It seems recently trusting the science is code for shut the fuck up and just do what the corporatocracy tells you. So that's my first digression. Anyway, so the synchronicity in my life has been the appearance of white lights, of light. There have been actual white lights in the sky, blinking lights at strange times, white light orbs in forest, and even strange visions during meditation at a very odd moment. So I guess I'm going to just go through it all, and I'm going to try to go through it in order, and let's just see what happens. So like I've said in the past, my interest in the unseen or the paranormal goes back as far as I can remember. I guess I could start with my oldest memories that can be associated with this particular synchronicity. So let me build a kind of backstory here. One time when I was very young, I remember asking my mom if she believed in UFOs, and she told me that she and her friend Lorraine had seen one once on the way to a baby shower before I was born. She described some kind of bright light that was shaped like a diamond over the road, but at the moment, when I asked her if she believed in UFOs, she said no. After she just gave that description, she said no. So we're already off to a weird start with her, but it's kind of how my mom was. Anyway, I put it away, and from time to time I would ask her, but she never really wanted to get into it. Well, I have this strange memory also of being with my mom and seeing some kind of lit up object in the sky. I remember kind of freaking out and her telling me not to quote unquote worry about it. Well, after that, I remember always looking for things in the sky. So I also remember being in my mom's car with a friend of mine, Bradley, who I hated. I guess he was a friend of me when we saw another, what I would call UFO. And I remember pointing out to my mom and my mom saying, "No, Kit, that's not like the other ones." Kit was my nickname. So those are two strange memories about things in the sky that I needed to put out there just to get started. So, okay. I used to sit in meditation with a group of old ladies at one of my teacher's houses. The teacher was a woman named Prem Shakti. Some of you know Prem, so this will be fun. But anyway, we did pranayam, Kapalabhati, and then Nadi Shodhana, then sat in meditation. That was the routine. Well, my eyes were closed for the most part during pranayam, but when we were done, I opened them briefly, then closed them as we began meditation. Well, my eyes were closed for maybe a few seconds when I could see water, but it was like a lake with water plants. What was strange is that I knew I was sitting up. I wasn't so deep into it that I lost body awareness, but the view was like I was hovering over the water. I was completely aware of the position of my body. I had no loss of bodily awareness, yet it was just weird because we had just started. So one of the things that needs to happen on your journey is that when things get weird, you need to stick it out. Don't open your eyes. Don't try to come out of it. Just be with it, whatever it is, no matter how scary or strange. So many times early on in my life, I'd have these experiences, but I'd get scared and open my eyes. I'm telling you this because it was so strange and so sudden that I almost opened my eyes, but I didn't. I just kept looking into this water. So I'm hovering, I guess, over this water and noticed a bright white light reflecting in the water. I remember thinking that it was the reflection of the sun in the water, and then had this thought to get closer to the water, like to lower myself down over it. But when I did, the reflection of the sun got bigger. And it dawned on me that that was my reflection in the water. Like I was that bright light. Well, that was so intense that I did open my eyes at that point. And when I did, I looked up at Prem. She opened her eyes slowly, gave me a smile, and then closed her eyes again. It was pretty wild. And won't lie, I sat there trying to get back to that place, but like most mystical experiences, it was one and done. So now at that point in time, I began reading about synchronicity. So that was now packed into my subconscious or my consciousness as a thing that while I'd heard of it, I didn't really give it too much thought until one day when I was at the gym. So I'm at the gym listening to an audio reading of Poimandres. Yes, I listen to esoteric occult literature when I work out. And in case you're wondering, Poimandres is an opening text to the Corpus Hermeticum, which is a dialogue between Hermes Trismegistus and a divine being called Poimandres, or the mind of God, or shepherd of men. Just something to get in the mood to work out. Anyway, I'm on the recumbent bike listening to this when the verse says, the light spoke to me. I am the divine mind, the infinite logos, the source of all things. The light that you see is the radiant being of truth and life. From this light, all things come, and to it all must return. That verse comes through my ears, and at that moment, I look up at the TV and I see Will Smith in the movie Suicide Squad, which I'd never seen, but my eyes went to the neck of his suit, and around the neck it says, I am the light, the way. So right then I just stop. My mind kind of scrambles. I get up and begin thinking of synchronicities. Needless to say, I left the gym with bigger things to think about. I was now considering synchronicities in my life, and this idea of light just flooded my mind. This happened a few days after that satsang I just told you about with Prem. Now, also at this time, I was deep into some esoteric Western occult literature as opposed to my normal Vedic interests. And something that I kept coming across was this mentioning of the inner light. I was having this very deep realization in that moment that we were actually light, right? I had heard of the rainbow light body and all that, but in this moment, it was this very real aha moment. One of those contributing factors was that I just finished reading the Vijnana Bhairava right before I got into some of the theosophical literature. So I'm going to try to paint a picture with a few quotes. So from the Vijnana Bhairava, we have verse 49. Focusing on the radiant light within the body, constantly glowing, one should meditate on the ultimate stillness. If the mind dissolves into this state, the experience of transcendence arises. Then we have verse 70. I'm doing these in a certain order, but they're going to skip around. Verse 70 says, by meditating on the inner light situated in the central channel or sushumna and focusing between the eyebrows, the mind becomes steady and one attains the kingdom of Shiva, or universal consciousness. By the way, in the title Vijnana Bhairava, Bhairava is another name for Shiva. So verse 44, the inner light of knowledge shines brightly within the body. Contemplating this radiant awareness leads to a profound peace and realization of the infinite void beyond duality. Verse 51, when the mind dissolves at the boundaries of the body, 12 fingers width from the heart center, that's what they're talking about, and all forms and sounds vanish, a radiant light emerges in the center. Verse 73, by immersing the mind in the luminous core of a radiant jewel, the mind becomes still. This leads to the supreme bliss of the ultimate light, the true nature of the self. And finally, verse 85, visualizing oneself consumed by radiant fire and meditating on a form free of disease, one merges into the vast inner sky and becomes light itself. So those are all verses from the Vijnana Bhairava. I wanted them in that order because I think it paints a picture. Anyway, now I'm going to give you a few from Alice Bailey. And if you aren't familiar with her, she's a Western occultist and theosophist, and one of the first, I think, think one of the first, to use the term New Age. And honestly, if you aren't familiar with Theosophy, I highly recommend you become familiar with it, especially if you're a seeker, because I believe that it is why we even have access to this stuff in the West. Blavatsky was very instrumental in that. And if you're confused as to whether or not she was a Nazi and what Aryan means, I guess DM me because you're confused. People, I'll say it once because people are very confused about this. When she says the superior race, she means humans. It's not race the way we talk about race. It's race the way they talk about race in the Vedas, right? The Nagas were a race. The Yakshas were a race, right? The demons were a race. The demigods were a race. The devas are a race. We are a race. Human beings are a race. And when she talked about the Aryans, she's referring to the Aryans from the Vedas. People think that like it means white people. It meant it was like this perfect person. And yeah, you can see where all of this stuff kind of gets hijacked by the Nazi party. Well, before that, the Vril Society. So that is very deep and a bit complicated. It's not that complicated. It just requires reading, which I don't know. I don't want to go on a rant about people getting their information and guidance from 1-minute clips on TikTok and Instagram, but it's happening. Anyway, so from Alice Bailey, we have the light within each human being grows through meditation, service, and the steady discipline of the personality. The light eventually merges with the greater light of the soul, and that's from a book called The Light of the Soul. And from her book, A Treatise on White Magic, when the inner light is discovered, it reveals not only the hidden depths of our own being, but also the interconnectedness of all life. We also have this little gem. This inner light, hidden within the form, is the light of the soul, and it is through this light that truth is revealed and knowledge is gained. That is from her book titled Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1. I could go on forever, but I just want to finish up Alice Bailey with this quote. This is a really good one. The light that shines within is eternal and changeless, the beacon guiding the pilgrim on the path of return to source. That's from Externalization of the Hierarchy. So I almost got my tongue twisted there. So we're seeing a theme here. And to finish up, let's get with the very, very, very wordy Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Let's get this out of the way. Trauma responses, anxiety, ruminating thinking, grief and loss, stress, these are all reoccurring patterns in the mind. They're often the result of reacting the same way over and over again. Why do we do this? Because the mind believes the past is still here, happening now, causing the nervous system to respond accordingly. What the mind perceives, the body feels. Mind Transformation and Restructuring, MTR, offers a pathway to release these patterns. It guides both the mind and the nervous system out of these repetitive cycles and into a lighter, freer way of being. If this resonates with you, feel free to reach out via direct message or through the contact section at theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. You don't have to live the way you've been living. Change is possible. These two are from The Voice of Silence. Thou canst not travel on the path before thou hast become the path itself. Let thy soul lend its ear to every cry of pain, like as the lotus bears its heart to drink the morning sun. The light within thee will strengthen and guide thee as thou servest others. By the way, I threw that one in there because I want you all to understand how I've become impossible to talk to at parties. It's by spending hours reading this sort of stuff. It's a lot. Okay. The next is from The Voice of Silence as well. The inner light is the divine flame that burns within every human heart, uniting the soul to the infinite. Almost like an infinite spark of being. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay, so from Isis Unveiled. This is probably her easiest to read book, if I'm being honest. Isis Unveiled. Write that down. Seek the divine light within, for only by discovering the eternal radiance in your own soul can you unlock the mysteries of the universe. And last but not least, The Secret Doctrine. This is probably her most famous book. The spark of the divine, the light eternal, dwells in the innermost sanctuary of the human spirit, waiting to be unveiled by the seeker. Now, you have to really understand that in this context, in this order of events, it was very moving to have had that vision and then to have had the experience at the gym. It kind of pulled it all together. It was a moment that I think we all have at some point where we go, oh, this is real. Like we want it to be real. We play with all of the thought experiments and visualizations and rituals to get there, but there's always this kind of sliver of doubt or this thought of, well, this would be really cool if it was true. But for me, it was going from an intellectual knowing, lowercase k, to a deep realization, capital R. And the thing about these deep realizations is that as they continue to happen, like along your journey, they just dig deeper and deeper until they go so deep into you that you just can't deny them anymore. So this synchronicity with lights became something I was keenly aware of, that the verses, this stuff just kept coming into my consciousness constantly. Now, fast forward about 3 years, I'm sitting at a traffic light and I see these two big white lights just cruise really slowly over me, well, over the whole intersection. I've mentioned this before in an earlier episode not too far back, but it was just this moment of awe. And then it got filed away under synchronicities with lights. It was just another odd sighting. Now, we jump to a few years to right before my mom got sick. So I asked her one more time about the UFO. This time I pressed her a bit more and she started to open up with some reluctance. And when I asked her why she was reluctant, she said that it was because she didn't understand it. She said that it was like her brain didn't know what to do with it, which I thought was really insightful for my mom. Anyway, she tells me the story again, and this time I was asking questions a bit more tactfully. So it was early 1970s. And she's going with her friend to a baby shower. Now, when she mentioned her friend Lorraine, I asked, is she still alive? She said yes. So I grabbed her address book and I was like, start dialing. So she calls Lorraine, puts her on speakerphone, and they start telling me about this early evening sighting where they were heading north on A1A in Jupiter, Florida. The sun was still out a bit, but going down when this giant light, like glowing, like radiant. It was like radiant. It was just kind of like the shape of a diamond, but it was the size of a car if you stood the car up on end. So it comes down ahead of them on the road and just hovers over the southbound lane, almost touching the road. And when I asked, what did you do? My mom goes, I gunned it and shot past it, which I thought was kind of crazy. Anyway, she ends her call with Lorraine and I said, wow, that was crazy. And she goes, yeah, but it wasn't as weird as the second time. Now I'm staring at her like, the second time? Like there was two of these? So I asked her to tell me about it. And again, she took some prodding. She said that it was hard to talk about because again, it was like she didn't understand it. I could see that she was confused and she was like, it's just so weird. Now let me describe actually where she was first. She's driving west on a 2-lane road in the Everglades. Well, there's Everglade wetlands on either side. It's called Indian Town Road. It's in Jupiter, and if you're a local, it's like back in Jupiter Farms. Actually, it was west of Jupiter Farms. So there's no houses, no nothing. This is important for you to know because she said, at first I thought a hunter threw his light over the car. I was like, over the car, like it arched over the car? She goes, no, it came down like the other one. It was the same size and it hovered over the road. And again, this crazy lady just decides to drive at it. And what I think is so fascinating is her trying to think of it as a hunter's light. By the way, it was 2005 when the second one happened. Now, this is interesting based on a few things. One was all the quotes that I gave you previously, and two, the synchronicity I'd had with light. And it was crazy because by this time I'd been reading Jacques Vallée's books about UFOs and their connections to fae folk like Passport to Magonia, and more importantly, his belief in their connection to angels. I don't want to blow this whole thing early because we still have more to go, but this is all starting to come full circle, and this is why I've been saying for years that if you're going to study the paranormal, whether it's ghosts, Bigfoot, or UFOs, you need to study the spiritual literature as well. So I end up with all these associations with lights. And so fast forward to the present. I took Christy to my dad's best friend's 80th birthday party. They lived next door to my parents out on Lake Okeechobee. There was a couple that bought my parents' place, and I guess they're around my age, and told Shorty, that's my dad's friend, that he could have his party at their house. The reason being that there'd be so many people because my dad and Shorty were part of a very large community of airboaters in South Florida. And these people were like family. So, one of the thoughts I had in taking Christy out there was that she would be meeting my parents for the first time. Though they're both passed on, she was going to see this aspect of my history that, after my parents died, just kind of left my life. It's a really weird thing to think about, but there are these connections that just kind of go away after both your parents are gone. For me, and I think about it often, I had an entire community of people, a massive extended family that I'd grown up with, and it was just gone. They were around for holidays and all these celebrations, and I just kind of took it for granted. So taking her out there was very, very special for me. So we're out there for a bit, and it was cool because they had all these photos hanging everywhere, and they all had either my mom or my dad in the photos. It was really cool for me to show Christy all these old pictures. So at some point we're sitting on this swing when the husband of this couple that bought the house comes by. He and I had met before, so I said hello. We started chatting, and Christy goes, "I'll bet you guys have a great view up there," pointing to the house. And so my parents lived in a giant stilt house they had big wraparound porch. So that's up there. The house is up. My dad designed the whole thing, and he and some fellas built it. It's a very strange thing, actually, to be at a place where you have so many memories. Your dad built it, but it's not yours anymore. You can't just make yourself at home in a place that was your home base for so long. No matter what was happening in your life, you could come out to the lake and you could regroup. And so many people would show up out there after they had some sort of a tragedy or even a big win to share it with Keith and Jean Welsh. Onion and Trigger, those were their nicknames. Onion and Trigger were always there for you, but now it belongs to someone else. It's just really weird. So the whole time that we were there, Christy was trying to get me to go inside these people's home, and I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to go snooping around their house. Anyway, she took her shot, and the guy goes, "Go on up and check it out." So we went up these stairs that I never thought I'd go up again. And these stairs were iconic for me. They were a very special place, as strange as that might sound. So there we were. I got to stand on the porch of my parents' home with this person that I love so much and get to share this very special place with her. So it was a very big deal. So we're walking around the porch and we get to the backside where the bedrooms are. We're walking along and I point to the window of my parents' bedroom and I say, that's where my dad died. Well, there were 3 lights on the back wall of the house. And when I said that, one of them blinked. Not flickered. It blinked on and off a few times. Christy goes, oh my God, did you see that? And I thought I did. So I turned around and she said, that light just turned on and off. I looked at this light and it does it again. It was the light right by the window where his head was when he passed away. Now, this is wild because all 3 of these lights are on one switch and they weren't on previously. They were all turned off and just one of them very clearly turned on and off multiple times. I can't stress this enough. It did not flicker. It turned on and off, on and off, on and off. And it felt like a hello. We both started laughing and it was really cool. So one more thing about that day, I never told Christy that I felt like I was taking her to meet my parents. I thought it was a strange thing to say, so I didn't say it. But on the way home, she said, I feel like I met your parents today. And that really, really touched me. And so now we have another association with light. And in that one, it was a message from a light. Now, the next event was in the midst of a lot of other things we were engaged in around the paranormal, but we were up in North Florida visiting a town of spirit mediums called Casa Dega. You should look it up. It's very interesting. If you're in Florida, I highly recommend it. Anyway, we were staying in a yurt on a large piece of property in the middle of nowhere in a town called Geneva, Florida. And we were engaging in Dr. Stephen Greer's CE5 protocol. However, it was very cloudy that night, not a lot of stars, but when we decided to go outside and try it anyway, and after an hour, so maybe about 2 hours, we decided to stop. So we took our little dog Kevin for a walk so he could go to the bathroom. But just tell you, so behind the yurt, there was this thick like pine forest. Very dense. And as we were walking, so we walked away from the yurt. Kevin goes to the bathroom. We're walking back. I'm a little bit behind her and Kevin. And I see this volleyball-sized white orb of light floating through the trees. And it's going the other direction. Like we're going one way, it's going another. And I was a little freaked out. I didn't say anything to Christy because she was already weirded out by this entire adventure, including this really sketchy, large piece of property with a yurt on it. Anyway, I told her in the morning. She thought it was really cool. But the point is, here we are with another light. And the next day was this very spiritually significant experience that we both had with a medium named Reverend Margaret Schmidt. We met with her and our lives have not been the same since in the best possible way. So before I go into the other events, let me say this. Synchronicity, like most mystical or paranormal experiences, are unique to the experiencer. It's like they were meant only for them, and they have something to teach the experiencer. And that, again, is really up to the experiencer. And I'll get more into that in a minute. I just want to get through these next few events before I dive deeper into that. So at this point, Christy and I together have had the event at my parents' house and the event that I only told her about in North Florida. She didn't actually see it, but I told her about it in the morning. Well, we were looking to buy a house and there was this neighborhood that she was interested in but couldn't find it. We didn't really know where it was. Well, one day we stumbled upon it completely by accident. So we pulled in. It was a really rainy, shitty day. It was one of those South Florida summer rainy days where the sky is just black. And it was just about to rain. It was starting to like hit the windshield in those big droplets. So we pulled in and like, I didn't want to get out. I felt like we were trespassing. So she gets out of the car really excited, and she's standing under this light that's on an overhang. And she goes, the light's off, by the way. And she goes, come on, we're supposed to be here. And right then the light turns on and it turns off twice. Again, it didn't flicker. It turned on and off. So needless to say, I got out of the car and now we live in that place. And incidentally, we were looking through our notes with Reverend Margaret Schmidt, and she described this exact place in Christy's session. So very synchronistic, kind of spiritual, mystical thing happening here. And here we are in the land of synchronicities, the mystical and the paranormal. You can see why lights are a thing for me. Christy has her own synchronistic things that guide her and show her that things are good, and I have mine. But anyway, one night we were sitting on our dock watching the stars when I looked up and I saw 4 lights that I thought were stars, and they started to spread out and move in these different directions. And I was like, oh my God, do you see that? Those are moving. And she's like, yeah, I see them too. And I was watching it. That night, Christy and I counted 12 of these moving lights. They would appear, move, disappear, reappear. That week, we saw the same type of thing multiple times. Now, we actually see them from not as often, but from time to time. But now we have even more of these. The synchronicity for me is just building and building. And, call them lights, call them orbs, call them whatever. But the point is, these events have driven home the point for me that we are light. What I saw in that vision was my own reflection. It was showing me my essence. As it says in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, remember the clear light, the pure, clear white light from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns, the original nature of your own mind. Let go into the clear light, trust it, merge with it. It is your true nature. It is home. What I've realized, and I do mean realize with a capital R, not learned, but realized, is that we don't die. We go back into light. This is the teaching. This is what every text, every teacher has ever tried to tell us. The synchronicity in your life is there to lead you, to guide you. It's a signpost from the divine leading you up the mountain. They have something to teach us. They are unique to us. No one is going to understand or care about yours, just you. It's a signal meant only for you. This is why so many visualizations in meditation involve imagining a ball of light that surrounds us. It's practice. It's spiritual practice. All practices are preparation for death, for our transition back to our true self, back to light. It's taking us on the road back home. And with that, I love you. I love you. I love you. We are here to remind each other, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you enjoyed this content and would like to support its creation, visit theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. There you can explore the various ways to get involved and support this work. Click the About button, read a little bit about me, and see what I have to offer you through the one-on-one sessions. Don't forget to check out the Patreon tiers, where we're building a community of everyday people with not-so-everyday interests. You'll also find the online apparel store. And as always, head over to the Participate button and join us. Together, we're growing a community of spiritual seekers just like you.